good to be in the right mood, mentally. So if you do a lot of sci-fi stuff, try to get yourself something that stimulates the sci-fi side of you. If you can do fantasy, do that. So now this painting, if you blur your eye now, is almost completed. We're coming out to the final 20%, right? This is about 80% there, but the last 20% is these tiny little tiny details that makes a big difference in terms of making your painting look refined. But it takes the most time. In general, for my work, I'm sure for a lot of people out there, the last 20% sometimes is longer. It takes longer to do that than the first 80%. It's generally that case, but that 20% could break your image into something that looks way more professional if you just commit the time. Because this involves getting there, really refining stuff, picking out little details and all that kind of things, but without overwhelming the overall thing. So it's quite hard to do that 20%. It's very easy to do the first part, especially the first 50%. That's the most fun part of a painting, which you saw in the first 10 minutes of this tutorial, right? And it's very easy to give it up at that point. Like, this is cool, but let's move on to something else and just ditch it, and it stays in a very sketch painting way, which is okay for learning, I think. But if you want to take it all the way, that takes a lot more time. And to give yourself some kind of schedule, put a clock on your desk or whatever. Paint, have fun, but also try to keep in mind how long you're spending on it. Don't let the time run your paintings, obviously, right? If you're slower, then go slower. But be aware though how long it takes to do something. So over time, you can see yourself getting faster, which will naturally occur anyways. Here I'm adding some volumetric fog to separate out some of the forms. Lighting up the values behind the first monster's head, so you can see him first, right? So if you look at contrast wise, the monster's head and the cloud that have the highest contrast. Right now I'm desaturating a little bit of yellow that's behind there, because yellow, the color spectrum is not as strong as, for example, blue. So yellow that's further away from camera is going to be a little bit more desaturated than the ones that are closer to camera, so I just did that. Now I'm adding in the weapon, which you saw in the very, very first sketch I did. Of course, I changed the design, right? I just wanted something to be there. So, but just painted it in real rough, and then, delete everything, because I painted everything on one layer, so I couldn't really paint this cannon in between the monsters. Now, some people will probably have the monster on a second layer, and it'll be very easy to paint behind him. But for me, I have to erase it out because there is no layer. So you can see the fog goes over the cannon and it goes over the monster. So I can go back in and kind of delete it out. But this process is not slow anyways. Deleting something out is quite fast as well. So I much prefer to paint without layers to be fast versus having 50 layers to manage. It's too confusing and slow. Right? Photoshop is very fast when you have, say, under 5 layers. Now I'm going to start detailing out the cannon. So the cannon is suggestive. I'm not even sure exactly how it works behind the scene there either, right? It's just a thing to kind of get the audience to think that, oh, this is a weapon and it's probably some kind of siege thing to fire on the cannon. How it's connected, it's up to the audience to kind of decide. You could see that maybe it's connected to the monsters. Maybe they log this thing in between them. So between every monster, there is a cannon that's mounted. Right? That kind of suggestive stuff is also very good for the imagination. Here's a bunch of ropes kind of holding together, some reflected light from the fire below on the cannons. Starts rough and then just define the details. Right. So this first cannon, I'm going to do the same thing. It's just define it enough for the audience to know what it is. And then the second one, which is, you see back there, is going to receive very little detail, but your eye will connect the two together. You'll finish the second one without you actually have to paint it. These are details, little spikes trying to match the world. So next week one should be pretty fun too. But daytime shots are much harder to do. When you have something like this, which is a overcast, almost a night shot, where you're depending a lot on artificial lighting to make the double in the lighting, right? You have upper and you have this bounce light, which looks very, very cool and quite easy in a way to paint. When you go to daytime shot, what you typically have is a very strong light source that lights everything up. Right, every single thing is defined. You don't have these harsh shadows typically, and your bounce light is going to be a little bit different than these, which is coming from a fire. Daytime shot, the bounce is actually coming from the sun as well, hitting the floor back to the object. So it'll probably take me a little longer actually the next week one, but we'll see. If you want to do something fast, do it nighttime. That's why a lot of films, the lower budget ones, or the smaller budget ones, tend to be darker because it's easier to do. It saves a lot of money. Right? So if you look at films like Matrix, Dark City, Gattaca, these kind of great movies, but they all take place pretty much at night, yeah, or in a very dark world. So Lord of the Rings as well, actually, a lot of night shots, right? A lot of night battles, because that way you just shoot whatever's close to the camera, everything else in the background just be fogged out. Daytime shots are much more expensive to do, and same is exactly true for painting. So. All right, define the castle. This is almost complete now. We're just, in real time, we probably only have about 15 minutes to go. Here, we just got about 3-4 minutes before we wrap up. So I spent that last time just kind of refining a little bit more detail on the castle here and there. Kind of just go around the canvas, feeling out areas that needs a little bit more touch up. Other than that, I don't want to go in there and detail everything, which I mentioned on the last episode. We don't want to detail so much that it becomes dead. I'm adding some splashes of paint, just some generic brush to paint. And here I'm adding some ember. When you have burning stuff, it's always flying in the air, and those will create a sense of movement. And drawing this is quite interesting, even though they're supposed to be random, right? These kind of sparks in the air, these kind of little flying debris, but it's random with control. And what that means is that if you make it too random, sometimes you actually see patterns. You'll see something like a square or a circle that even though you kind of randomly dot it on the page, you start making patterns. So I go back in and actually delete stuff that's creating things that contradicts or contrasts with what I don't want. Right? I have this movement from right to left, and then from left to right. If you look at the overall composition, everything on the right is pointing to the left, everything on the left is pointing to the right. So sometimes you get a little bit of randomness in those sparks, these kind of flying debris that could take the eye away from that. So then I kind of delete it. So random without being random, I guess, is the best way to put it. So this painting now is coming to an end. It's pretty much done. Just little tiny highlights here and there, and then the last thing I'll do is probably sign my name down there, and then we'll call it complete. So hopefully you guys like this one as well. And next week we'll do something similar. I think this is kind of fun to do a series of paintings that are just things that you guys probably are familiar with. We're seeing in games or films, and we'll do a whole series of these kind of things to show you how they're done. So I sign my name. Hopefully you guys enjoy this episode, and I will zoom out to show you guys a little bit of the painting. And please subscribe. And also, if you want to get the high-res version, go to my Twitter page, Feizu Design. Just search for that. And I'll probably have a link for the high-res. So until then, I'll see you guys next week. Have fun. Bye-bye.